you is be true to what you said on paper.
All right, welcome back to At the Round Table with Mamley. I'm your host, Larry Elson. The doctor is off today. Dr. Bradley is taking a well-deserved day off. He is visiting our nation's capital. We want to thank our sponsor, Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company. For all your mortgage needs, give branch manager Cora Holbrook a call at area code 781-342-0252. Guarantee Mortgage is located at 75 State Street in downtown Boston, Mass. Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company. Guaranteed to exceed your expectation. So, folks, before the break, we were talking about, whether or not we have SROs in the school resource officers, and the declining education, particularly in urban schools. We're seeing, like I said, Houston in Texas is now going to be taken over by the state. Here in the city of Boston, the state is threatening to take over here as well. They have taken over other schools around, and Lawrence in particular is one of them that was taken over. We've seen this in Rhode Island. We're seeing this predominantly in, urban cities, predominantly in school districts at communities of color. And is there a connection with a lack of safety in these schools, as well as the lack of learning that takes place in the school? And folks who are saying, that one can take place without the other, I vehemently disagree. If you don't have a safe environment, learning will not take place. I see it. I just don't think the two can be separate. How you work them in together, I'm not saying that's not up to debate, and we can work on that. But I think if you had it would be nice if we didn't need school resource officers or police in schools. But we live in a different world. We're seeing shootings taking place in school. And here in Boston, we're not immune from it. We've had violence taking place, stabbing, shootings in front of schools, at schools. So we've got to find a balance that people can live with, but we can't ignore the fact that the education, the learning is declining as we have. So I want to welcome back in our callers on the line. We have Dan Walker on the line from the Sound Travel and Mom's Corner, heard every Wednesday morning from 8 to 9 a.m. T. Michael Thomas from the People's Academy, and as well as Terrence Williams is on the line. So, Dan, I want to go back to you for a second and throw your question back out there to get a response. If you could just...
All right. So, and the other thing, and while I was doing the break, this just essentially hit me. There are people out there that fought to integrate the schools and then moved away from that very same school into a different school where there was less integration. In other words, you fought to integrate a school that you completely abandoned, leaving that school segregated once again, but now on a much lower level. And I just go ahead.
No, so your point is well taken, because Boston now is close to 90% black and brown, right? So
right, we know it didn't start that way.
No,
because
it didn't.
We were
it had just the opposite effect.
Yeah. And then, of course, the education goes down, and then, as I said earlier, during the age that we would have come through school, we would have watched those film strips, and yes, back when they had a 16-millimeter projector, and I didn't see any, I cannot think of one where there was any representation of a minority in that film clip anywhere concerning industry, business, trades, anything. It just, we weren't represented in any way, shape, or form. So how is it that we've done so well? And again, now what to do with, because when you have the money, you can leave. You don't have to put up with nonsense in your school. You just move out.
Well, to that point, Dan, it's not a money problem here. Boston's public schools, which the population has declined. I know when I started working in that unit, there were close to 75,000 students in the system. Now it's down to around 47,000. Yes, and to be fair, a lot of that was siphoned off by the charter schools, which is still funded by the Boston public school system. So that money goes with the students. So the numbers are probably still somewhere around total together, maybe around 65,000. It's a budget of $1.4 billion, almost $1.4 billion. And they're asking for an increase this year of another $60+ million. So my question to all of you, but to Terrence, this is an election year. We have several of our city councils, mainly, if not all, of the black city councilors who are opposed to any type of safety that includes metal detectors and screening of a young people. We're seeing the number of weapons in the schools increasing. We're also seeing the drugs in the school. Now, it's interesting that they're saying now they want to search kids for drugs, but no mention of searching them for weapons. Terrence, and it's an election year.
Let me ask you, right, Larry? Do you? Because to me, when stuff like this happens, when you see things happen like this, when they take the police officers, the Boston school officers out of the equation, you take the metal detectors out of the equation. To me, I see a plan, that was already illustrated and blueprinted that for a takeover. Because you said it's not happening in other parts of the state where they have metal detectors, where they have officers in the schools. But in Boston, they don't have it. So to me, it's like it's a design takeover to take over the school systems because they're showing that it's unsafe, that's underrated. So it's planned for a takeover because you can't tell me that the Boston, who has the biggest school department here in this state, can't function with all these colleges and universities around it that can pour money into it.
Not just money, but resources, right? Where they get tax credits for being here, and yet I'm not sure what, if anything, they're doing. I mean, people come from all over the world to get educated here in Boston. There's no reason why they shouldn't be supporting our declining learning here in the city of Boston.
Can I jump in here, Larry?
Go ahead.
Hold on, one more thing. Okay. You know what? Because I think, with the gentrification, people, you have to look at everything. With us being gentrified out, they need those school systems to better because it's a longer plan. It's just not today. It's a longer plan that they have that once we gentrify, these communities, now we can create.
So what I hear you saying is once the gentrification takes place, we will see an improvement in the education here in the city of Boston.
Might not be in our lifetime, but it's going to happen. It's coming.
Okay.
It's coming. I tell people.
Well, the other part of this is the school system itself. When it lost its direction to educate in, shall we say, those of us know the 3 R's: reading, writing, and arithmetic, and became more of a social experiment, not just with integration, but with far more dangerous mindsets. Don't teach real history. Don't teach things that you need to know. Only hold the heroes up. Abraham Lincoln is a hero to the black people. But if you study history for real, then you realize he's not so much a hero as a person who had to make a decision and made the decision that turned out to be the right decision, but he was just as likely to have made a decision that could have gone the other way.
Well, I think, but I'm going to let T. Michael jump in a second. But I want to just say to your point, Dan. But now we're seeing just the opposite, like in states like Florida, where you're talking about learning about the real history. That doesn't, folks don't want people to learn the real history of this country. I agree, that's a component of it. But there's also folks who, like the governor of Florida, that doesn't want the real history to be taught because it's not so favorable to this country.
It's interesting. My jury is still out on Governor DeSantis. He has done some things that I think are just phenomenal, and then he has done some things that I think, okay, yeah, really, dude.
Exactly, kind of Hitlerist,
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying
is that I look, whatever side you weigh in, and because I want to see Michael and stand by Terrence,
right?
Is that there's always been this freedom. You can't say you want freedom for certain things, and then you say, well, if you don't like a book or whatever, you don't have to read it. But to tell people, adults, is what you can and cannot read. I can't go to the library.
Oh no, I completely agree with you.
That's what I'm saying. So that's the thing. Where you fall in on that. That's where you cross the line and you say, well, that's not democracy. That doesn't allow me the freedoms of my choice. You're choosing for me, and you don't get to legislate my life in that way.
Right.
T. Michael, I want you.
Yes.
Give you an opportunity.
What I wanted to add is that I want to go back a little. Look, the first move they did was to remove the vocational training out of our schools. That's number one. Fast forward. Remember, and you're hearing it here first. Within the next year or so, look at all the resources that is coming into the city for apprenticeship vocational construction training. The black and brown community is not set up to receive or accept.
Well, and that's a good segue because gentlemen, I want to pivot a little bit. I want to continue this conversation, but I also want to bring into it, because you just gave me a nice leadway into what this hour is going to be. Part of that is what's going on at the Boston Convention Center. I know, Terrence, this must really have you paying attention because I know you're always out there advocating for equality in state. The water and sewer. So this whole stir up about the convention center and the lawsuits being filed about discrimination taking place down there at the Boston Convention Center by black folks who are working down there, and the lack of diversity there. And I've learned this out of the 12 or 13 members of the board of directors there's only one person of color in that position there. What I'm hearing is troubling. But even more troubling as well is the lack of involvement from our leaders, particularly our leaders in the communities of color. Of color. Like, they're weighing in on metal detectors at the city council, but I don't hear much about them about what's taking place down at the convention center. And it's surprising because NAACP is going to be hosting, if I'm not mistaken, their convention there this year.
Well, really, come on. Do you really? Are you seriously marveled about this? And I am a product of vocational education. In my high school days, my father orchestrated or figured out how or whatever that my high school was vocational all morning electronics. I went through a whole program where I did mechanical drawing one semester, which I was horrible at. I did woodworking, which I was also horrible at, electricity, and then electronics. So my whole high school training was vocationally based. But the dirty little secret is back then, you were given vocational training if they didn't really think you were going to be that much of an academic. Just being real about it.
No, exactly. And that was okay. That wasn't, at least they assessed where you were, right? And being realistic and really trying to set you up for success. But again, like I said, Terrence, I want to pivot a little bit. I want to get your take on this matter that's taking place at the convention center. Did we lose Terrence?
Can I touch on that, Larry? Because I'm down here working.
Yep, go ahead.
Well, like I said last week when Senator Collins was on, right before COVID, we had started a pipeline with David Gibbons at the convention center. I'm not here to defend or deny or admit. I have no idea what the other aspect of it is. I could only speak on my interaction with him and what we were working on. And we were in the process of creating a pipeline to bring some bodies down there, black and brown. Other folks who has been working in it, I have no experience or interaction with their experience, so I cannot say there is not racism.
But it's not just the people that work there. It's also reported that people of color who are sponsoring events there, who are vendors there, are receiving the same type of a treatment. And, also, there's a general counsel that's supposed to oversee this. Where are they weighing in on this? I don't hear much from the people who are charged with the board of directors and those folks. But, they spending a lot of money on outside counsel to defend this in some ways, but I don't see anything happening as far as addressing these concerns that are being leveled.
Right, Larry. But what I'm saying is that coming from the People's Academy, the virus shut things down right when we started working things out. And we recently restarted a few months back to continue where we left off. So I wanted to put that here to say this, that even with that taking place, our elected officials, same thing, I'm tying it into the schools, that we have a plan, we've reached out and said, hey, we're willing to go in and work together. We're hearing crickets.
Yeah. So, Terrence,
they're more concerned, really quick, they're more concerned, like you said, of the metal detectors. And we're focusing on economic upliftment. And there is no interest at all.
So Terrence,
gentlemen, I'm going to have to leave you, but I'll keep listening.
So, what's that?
I'm going to have to leave.
Okay, all right.
Listening.
So, Terrence, thanks, Dan. So, Terrence, what are you hearing out there as far as this? Because I know you're someone that's always out there advocating and pushing for equality in these trades, and yet this story, to me, doesn't seem to be getting the attention that it deserves and the response from our elected officials that it deserves.
Larry, it's not getting, because you have to realize,
who it's
follow
impacting,
the money.
right? And who it's impacting, right? Because
follow the money.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our elected officials, you know what? When they donate, and that's why I tell people when you're running for office, be careful who donates to you.
Mm-hmm.
People say it in church. You gotta be careful who touches you because their spirit comes upon you, and it's a bad spirit. So even so this goes as far as donations. Whoever donates to you, they want you to do what they want. They're not donating just to be donated. They don't donate because they think you're the better candidate. They think you're the better person that to do what's wrong for the people
so
and right for them.
They're paying for and buying access to you if you get into that position. And the fact that most of the time it's not the average person in some of these communities that is donating to them, so they don't really care what you think because you can't get them out.
Exactly, and that's my whole thing. It's like, okay, you know what? If I donate to you and you don't do as I say, I'm going to donate to somebody else to run against you, and we're going to get you out because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
So,
and it's wrong.
Right. So what's your take on the governor, the AG, and the general counsel? Should they be looking into this more than it seems?
Yeah, they should be looking. Every time there's something, that's going wrong in this state and in our community, everybody, not just the mayor, everybody statewide, because the governor runs Boston too. Just not, mayor just don't run Boston. The governor oversees Boston too, and so does the AG.
Right, and the convention center is in Boston, but it's run by the state. The mayor has several appointees. She gets to put 4 people on the board, so the mayor does have some say in this as well. So she does appoint the mayor does appoint 4 people there, members of the board of directors. So she does have some leverage here, but I don't know if anything that she has spoken out about this.
But see, that's the whole thing, Larry. When this political game is dirty. It's a dirty game.
Yeah.
Unless you have thick skin and real faith in who you're supposed to be serving, then you're always going to serve the other part.
Yeah.
Because everybody's supposed to have a say so. Because you'll come out and you speak up on something that's nonsense, but something that's really affecting the people.
Mm-hmm.
You'll keep quiet. You'll keep quiet. But you know what? That's our fault. Because we don't hold them accountable. Because we don't hold them accountable. We have to hold everybody accountable, whether they white, black, Spanish, Chinese, whoever. We have to hold them accountable.
Yeah, that does.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, and then I'm going to grab this other call. Okay.
The question is, to every elected official that's ever held in office the last 2 cycles, what have they done economically to uplift black people?
They're all running. Well, the city council, there's an election every year in this state, right? It's either city or at state level. This year, it's the city council. They're running for re-election. Why aren't people pressing them on what they're doing to address this? They do have some say. The convention center is here in the city of Boston. Why aren't they addressing this in a meaningful way? While they're out there on the campaign saying we should be re-elected, when we're discussing how the schools have not improved, a lot of the things that they claim that they're charged with, that they elect me so we can fix these things, are broken. And they're worse off now, but yet people are for a re-election, and from all indications, they'll be reelected with no real challenge to them.
And that's my point, Larry. What have they done? Let's see. Let's do a report card. Let's be fair. What have they done to address black virus, joblessness, murder, and incarceration?
All right. Well, stand
What
by.
have any of them done?
Let's hear what this other caller has to say. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable. Jamal, you there? Did we lose Jamal?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
That's all right. Is it a good morning?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. For me, it is.
Okay.
I'm with baby girl in Atlanta. So,
okay.
that's
all
always
right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And for that reason, I won't be seeing you tomorrow.
All right. Got you. Okay. All right.
All right.
Thank you for the heads up. Okay.
Indeed, right.
Yeah.
A day before.
Yeah.
But I was listening before and I couldn't get in because obviously the lines was jammed.
Right,
Everybody, all the usual,
time. Okay.
right, all the usual callers was on,
Right.
and I wish I could have gotten to the conversation earlier when y'all was talking about some of the kid stuff.
No, we're still
and the
enjoying it.
parents.
So go ahead. No, go ahead. This is all part of
Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing that I see, and it irks my soul, because we were talking about how like the parents don't engage with the kids, or they're walking, they be on their phone or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it's good that the parents don't engage with the kids because some of the engagements I've seen haven't been too spiffy. Okay, and we all like to joke about when we grew up and we got beat and all this type of thing and bibbity bop, but it was a different class system unless you were really in some abusive type of situation. But sometimes now when I'm walking through the community or whatever, and I see particularly these young women sometimes with their child, mainly young men, I've seen it, and they are cussing this little child out like it's a person that broke into their house. I mean, Emma effing, the N word.
Yeah.
You make me sick. I can't stand you. Get your A over here, and like snatching them up and hurting them and jerking them. And this is just like I'm seeing like they're walking to the bus stop or something, like to get the bus or to get the school bus or whatever. It's like what did the kid try to stab you?
Yeah.
What would elicit this type of response with so much venom and anger? And of course, these parents now, as y'all know, I indulge, but everybody handles it differently. Because too, some of these parents, they on their fourth or fifth blunt of the day, or they, they've been sipping on some beer or some Hennessy or whatever they doing, and it alters their mood. So all I want to say is like it's a different type of parenting today than what was going on before.
No, I don't disagree with that. I don't think none of us do, Jamal. But I'm saying also, but we're still not seeing the learning taking place in the school. And I get it, because if the parents aren't helping with the discipline, when your child is not prepared when they walk in there and they're coming in very confrontational, and the parents are reinforcing that confrontation and they're not holding themselves and their children accountable. This is why we're saying, like, you're seeing this across the country in urban settings. I don't know if you heard, like Houston, Texas, the governor is now going to take over. So we know what happens usually when the state. We saw this in Lawrence, right? When the state took over, and Boston is way bigger than Lawrence. So, and that was a difficult task for the state to run the Lawrence school system. If they have to come in here and take over Boston, I'm not sure it improves.
No, I mean, certainly there's no guarantee of improvement. And really, and two, because they're really not getting to the roots of the issues.
That's
and really,
what I'm
they can't.
about.
Yeah, they can't. What's the old saying? You can't legislate people's mind states,
Right.
or their hearts. So you can make a law. I mean, look, there's a law for speeding. How many people speed every day?
Yeah.
There's a law against drunk driving. How many people still drink and drive? There's a law against child abuse. You see? So, I mean, laws are cool when you get caught and it's a tool to punish, but it's not necessarily a preventative measure. It may be preventative for a small segment of the population, but most people are going to do what they're going to do anyway.
Right. So my question, gentlemen, is this: how do we hold parents accountable? And don't get me wrong, because there are parents who are trying their best, but then there are a lot of them who just feel like if they push the child out of the door, they've done their job. How do we hold those folks accountable in the same way we want to hold law enforcement. We want to hold educators. So if your child isn't learning, we want to hold the teacher accountable. And as I alluded to earlier, when the Globe did that story during COVID, and over 50% of children were not logging onto their computers at home, not at school, at home. And no one was saying holding the parents accountable, because that was an example. If you're a teacher and you've got a classroom of 25 to 30 students and one is being disruptive, it's affecting the whole class. And now you have your child at home and you can't even get your child at your home to listen and log in. What do you expect this teacher to do? Are they some miracle workers?
Well, you got to show them tough love, Larry.
What's that?
Tough love. In my program as a teacher, and I'm dealing with grown folks, some of them are older than I am, and I let them know, hey, listen, my purpose here is to teach you a skill set, a trade.
Yeah. So,
and I'm not here to discipline you. I'm not your father. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? It's so you can either listen to me and do it my way, or I'll show them the door.
So,
it's that simple.
Gentlemen, and I want to start with you, Terrence. This is an election year in the city of Boston. We have a city council. The folks have voted and said that they voted to have an elected school committee. And it looks like that's not going to happen. Should there be a price to pay at the ballot box for folks not listening to the voters? And something where what they have in place now at this point it's not working. It's not working. It's not accountable to the people who are the stakeholders, i.e. the parents and the children, because there's no consequences other than by the mayor to remove them. It's an election time in the city of Boston. I'll start with you, Terrence. Should there be a price to pay if folks are not listening to the voters?
Of course there should be a price to pay.
And what should that price be?
Because we are the one who put you in there, and we should be the ones to take you out. If you're not listening to us, and if you don't think our kids have are the best interest in your platform, then you're not at the best interest in our platform. So yeah, you should be removed from your seat because you're not listening. That means you're working off of what you think instead of what the people think. If the people voted for it, the people voted for it.
So Jamal,
bottom line,
right? Jamal, your thoughts on that? But also, I got to be honest. Some of the people I'm hearing that are even thinking about running. I'm like, here we go. We trade one problem for another. I mean, is Boston that absent of talent? I know they're not, but that this is the best we can produce is what we're seeing is versions of Jerry Springer at the city council. Jamal?
No. So, and as a person who ran before, right? And people be asking me now, you gonna run again, brother, or something like that.
Terrence ran as well. Yeah, so you guys
exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Terrence's experience was or what have you, but I'm gonna tell you straight up, like I never intended to run. Me running was out of a sense of urgency because there was somebody else who was thinking about running against Tito, and I thought that Tito, although many people love him and beloved and all that, I thought he was horrible, right? And so, just we weren't getting served. We were dealing with the dancing and the partying, and I was like, man, this is not what it is. So somebody else was like, yo, I'm going to run against Tito. And I was like, good, because that person is, college educated, more polished than me, looks good in a suit, all that type of stuff. Great. I'll throw all my support behind you. At the last minute, and that was because Tito was going to run for mayor that year. At the last minute, Tito decided he wasn't going to run for mayor, and then the guy decided he didn't want to run against Tito. And I was like, man. So then that's what made me enter as a write-in sticker candidate because the deadline had already passed or whatnot. But in any event, my point is that I didn't want to run for office. And most people don't, generally. And that's what it is. It's not that we don't have a bunch of talented people out there, but the talented people or those who are, thinking in a certain way are going to be reluctant to enter into that sphere of that realm, that arena, because it's so
toxic.
Great. Yeah. It's just like, who wants to, and at the same time, you got to give up whatever little semblance of privacy you may have. Now your whole life is on exposure. And as you know, because I think you were one of the recipients when I ran, I pre-released my Corey just to get here's my criminal record. I gave it to several reverends. I gave it to several organizations. just to get that out the way, because I knew the level of scrutiny that was going to come. So it takes a special person who is either really about public service, that's the good motivation, or the bad motivation is, or they're such an egomaniac, right? And those generally are the two things that we get. Either people who are really dedicated to public service, or people who are somehow doing this out of ego. Either way, what I'm into is competency. And as you said about some people who are running, I won't say any names or whatever, but there was somebody who was running who misspelled the position that they were running for. And I found that problematic.
Mm-hmm. Well, but that's what I'm saying is that, I haven't heard of a plan to address these real serious and pressing issues in our community, right? The cost of just living in the city of Boston, the education, right, that of Boston, the mass incarceration issue in Boston here, the crime that is on the rise here in Boston, So these are very serious concerns to people, but again, I feel like a lot of these folks at the city council this year will breeze right into re-election. I mean, and there's been enough, and some of them, the scandals, but just the performance. And if you grade them on a curve of what have you done that has been transformative, I'm struggling to find anything that the city council has done other than pass themselves pay raises over and over again. And yet,
can I jump in here, Larry?
Yes, go ahead.
And again, I got to keep sounding like a broken record. Joblessness, murder, and incarceration. That's what the People's Academy has been created for, designed for. But there is a solution on the horizon, because with what we're about to do within the next few weeks, that it's going to expose their inactions on what a lot of them should have done. And to think that, like I said, we're in $1 billion industry, in the construction industry, and not one of them would say, hey, you know what, T. Michael, we don't care for you personally, but you're working on a solution that could help our constituents.
Right, but that goes to what I was saying, shifting a little bit, and Jamal and Terrence, again, I want to hear your comments on this as well, is what's going on over at the convention center. With every time we turn around, no matter what area it's in, it's always us on the receiving end of getting less, getting our due. Even when we're paying our money, as you said, people say they were doing that as vendors. They're paying their money and they're still being disrespected to pay their money to book an event at the convention center. And here we have the NAACP, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be at the Boston Convention Center this year for their annual convention, with all of this hanging over about how they treat black people.
And that's my thing, Larry. You know what? Because some folks really don't care on how we are being treated, our own folks. Mm-hmm. Just as long as they can get, their event, off. Because it didn't happen to them, so they feel like, okay, well, you know what, y'all go fight for that, but we're going to still do our event.
Terrence, I got to jump in here, and I'll tell you why. I've been planning to do an exhibit there before the virus. It's back on play because the virus has been uplifted. Also, I'm part of that sculpture with the dragon. So what you're trying to tell me is that this is a platform that for People's Academy to do a project to bring some black bodies down there, we should drop it?
Of course, because the thing about it is, if they're gonna, if we're fighters for our people, if we're fighters for our people, and we want justice, we want justice and fairness for our people, but we're gonna go spend our money with the same people that are disrespecting our people. Then who are we to keep fighting for people?
Let me jump in here, gentlemen. Let me jump in. And to that point, I think Terrence. Let me just jump in here right quick, because I think Terrence makes a good point there. Because guess what? If those folks who needed to get to work didn't boycott that Montgomery bus system, right? Because they put their getting work, they walk. Sometimes we have to suffer in the pain, even though it might benefit us. But that's okay, because if in the long term, if more people are, it's more prosperous for all of us rather than one of us, then I'll suffer that pain.
Okay, now can I respond?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, then I will flip the script. Look at Quincy and Warren. Look at People's Academy. It's been functioning with none of those support that was created and designed to make black and brown people employable. And then you fast forward, you have a counselor like Frank Baker, who just got us a second location out of the Beasley to train individuals to be instructors. And he's the same individual that fought against DMB and Marty for us to get that land up on Quincy and Warren. And where are the support? Right? Again, once again, we're getting paid at the convention center. We're not spending money. They're paying us. Yeah. So they're creating opportunities, which they have. Show me one elected official that looks like me that has supported the People's Academy, advocated for, etc. Please, Terrence, show me one.
So I want to get Jamal's take on this convention center matter. Jamal, where do you stand on this? Are you should the NAACP be spending their money there? Black folks coming there pretending that this problem doesn't exist?
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I went to go get my headphones for this one. Okay, so this is the deep conversation. So as T. Michael points out, there's many layers to it. So we have people who are normally not our allies, as people I think would typify Frank Baker, who very many times would go against the things that most people in the Black or Latino community think is a no-brainer, things we want.
This redistricting to come up of late. But go ahead.
Exactly. So he's voting the other way. But in T. Michael's experience, Frank Baker has been the guy who has been willing to use his political capital to help T. Michael. Now, also, too, we got to understand that's because, in my opinion, that's because T. Michael's People's Academy is a People's Academy that teaches a hand skill, you know, like metalworking, a trade. That's cool. Now, if T. Michael's People's Academy taught Malcolm X and critical race theory, he might not get Frank Baker's support. So that's
okay.
a whole nother thing. Like if his school was about, you know, black philosophy and culture, you know what I mean, that type of thing, it might not be as easily supported because that's an ideological and a philosophical standpoint, as opposed to, I like this guy, he's teaching people how to work so they can get into the job force. That's easier for him to grasp and say, okay, I can get behind that. It's less controversial, is my point. Okay, so, and for the reasons why other elected officials don't support it, unfortunately, I ain't got no answers for that one. All right, now, to the convention point. Years ago, when the Urban League was bringing their convention here, there were many meetings, and I hate this about Boston because we're so thirsty. We think that every time a convention comes here, it's going to save us. Somehow it's going to be such an economic impact and a boost. And if you sell your little shea butter and make your little earrings, all of a sudden you're going to be a millionaire when this convention comes to town. Okay? And we really sound like some of these really desolate places who really think the same thing when a big event or something comes to town. I don't understand how people think an event is going to have the impact that it does. But in any event, Darnell Williams was at the head of this campaign at the time, bringing the Urban League convention to Boston. At that time, Jim Rooney, who was in head of that, now I believe he's still the head of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce. Benny Wiley was one of the people who was kind of an ambassador for this thing. And I have all this on video, so people don't have to believe me. Literally what they said, Darnell said, can you imagine what's going to happen when we bring 13,000 black people to Copley, the Back Bay, Newberry Street? I heard him clearly. It was a plan to deliver and funnel black dollars into white pockets. I can't make it any
Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan wasn't on the list, huh? Wow.
No. Literally, it was excluded to the reason when I was doing my newspaper. That's why, and to this day, I maintain the Black Boston Business Guide. I literally made a newspaper, just a listing of all black businesses. I'm thinking, if you are coming for the Urban League convention and you're coming up here from Memphis, and you're at one of the dinners and you spill some A1 steak sauce on your shirt, don't you want to know a local dry cleaner?
Right.
If you come here and you need a lineup, don't you want to know a local barber? If you're here, you got a hankering for some Jamaican food, don't you want to know where the local spot is to get a patty? So I put together a compilation of things, and really their plan was to consolidate all this money to show all these black people Boston. So they were going to get all the Seaport. They were going to go Paul Revere's house. They were going to go to Paul Revere's house, but don't give a doggone about Malcolm X's house.
Wow. No,
you see? And so, this is the mindset, but this was a concerted effort. And then my last point, Miss Benny Wiley, who I have a lot of respect for, but politically we have a different ideology, clearly. What she said is, because people were talking about, well, how are we going to get jobs at the convention center? Don't worry. There'll be a lot of servant positions.
Wow.
Okay? And she it wasn't a faux pas. She didn't mean to say service positions and then messed around and said servant. She said servant positions.
Wow.
And then another thing, too, she said, in Black Boston, what we need to do is make sure basically we're on our P's and Q's and tell all our friends, all our cab drivers, and everybody to make sure that they're on their best behavior and treat everybody polite. I mean, I just the things that I heard in terms of, and Jim Rooney told his story of how they went after these big black groups in order to get them to Boston, because black groups didn't want to come to Boston.
Right.
They went and they courted the organization called BIG, which is Blacks in Government. They landed that. Then they did the Urban League convention. As you know, NAACP was already supposed to be here, but COVID and all that. So now the NAACP is landing. The question, and out of all of them, the NAACP has the best chance to make this happen. The question is, how is it going to economically benefit the black and Latino people here in the city of Boston based on who was able to work the convention? That's one. Who was able to vend at the convention? That's two. Who was able to provide the services for the convention? That's three. And if they are going to tell their conventioners that Black Boston even exists, and if they're going to use this as an opportunity to introduce those people to Black Boston. Done.
So let me drop the mic on that one. So here's the thing too, is that this is why I struggle with this whole Faneuil Hall thing, right? Because actually, I said, if you want to name, I don't know if you gentlemen know who Charles Sewell is. Sewell was. He was an abolitionist, and actually, if you want to change it, that he's somebody you might want to think who was fighting back in the day, right? Because see, I'm like, Faneuil Hall, in my opinion, doesn't even exist because I don't spend my money down there, because I do know the history of Faneuil Hall. So that's not a fight that is a priority for me, right? And to your point about like those Newbury, I don't shop in those neighborhoods, right? I want to bring the money into the communities that I grew up in that I know. Now, to that point as well, because over these years, and Jamal, your point is well taken. Having a stand there for a couple of days is not going to enrich you, because if you didn't have an infrastructure in place, right, to where you have a store where people can come consistently, where that is just an extension for those few days to help you supplement your income, it doesn't really change the game for you. And that's the problem with all of these stuff, is like they're giving and taking away. Because if they said, okay, to Cheryl down at Soleil, we want you to feed all of these folks. Well, does she have the infrastructure, right, to be able to support her to feed 13,000 people? Because that takes years to build that up, right? So there are maybe one caterer in Boston that might be black owned that can feed those folks. But this is what I'm saying. Like I remember having a conversation with Mario Susie, the father of Susie Construction, and he saw how he started out with one truck and he became this conglomerate because he was able to build up, so he could, instead of just doing a dead end street, he could now do all of Blue Hill Avenue.
Can I jump in here, Larry?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Jamal, for the breakdown. That was perfect.
Yeah.
I want to add to that. Our purpose at the convention center is to create a pipeline that we go there and make a livable income with whatever we have to offer and take it back to our community. That's number one. Number two is something that I need to say on the air. Let's take the Blakehead Museum. We did the assessment on it. We trained folks for 2 years, and that team over and we even bought materials. They turned around. They got a white company to do the copper work. It was promised to us, and they gave it to a white company that was not even equally as qualified or skilled to do the project. But no one is speaking on it. And we're the only black institution that works with copper like that. Think about that.
No, I don't disagree with that. But I'm saying is that when are we going to start? Because Jamal just, what he said really had me thinking, when are we going to start putting together an infrastructure so that in 10 years, if the NAACP or some black company is coming here and we're hosting 12,000 people, we have actually some place to bring them, right? So it's to Jamal's point. Do we have an infrastructure in place? If we wanted to bring them over here, do we have enough barbers lined up? Do we have enough? Like, I have family coming into town, and I always struggle with, I want to take them out to eat in some place that's culturally sensitive, right? And where am I going to take them? Where we can have a sit down? Where am I going to take them? The
NAACP need to do what the People's Academy is doing. You go down there and you go there to get contracts. You're not going there to spend money. You're going there to get contracts to create a pipeline of jobs for black folks.
Right.
That is the approach.
So I have great faith in Tanisha Sullivan, who is the president. Is that the correct title? The president of the
NAACP,
the
Boston branch.
Yeah, Boston chapter of the Boston branch of the NAACP. But yeah, so I have faith in her out of certainly out of certain past people. Her heart's in the right place, her
Absolutely.
intentions, and her head's in the right place. So if we were ever going to get contracts, this is the one. But now, okay, for y'all that don't know, on a side business, I sell incense, shea butter, all sorts of little types of things like that, right? Now, I might go and vend for a couple of days. And, I might make some money, but I know that that's not the key to my success. As you said, it depends on the business that you have, the infrastructure. So let me name one business that I think is going to do extremely well at the NAACP convention, and I will certainly make sure, if they're not already on it, that they will be involved, is Frugal Bookstore. Okay? When you have a book stand there, and, particularly you have, because whoever are going to be the speakers, you have the books of all the speakers, plus you have all the general interest black books. A book place is going to murder the game. Okay? They're going to make money. Okay? And to your point, Larry, consistently, people after the convention can continue to order books. That's where I got your Black Police in America book. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
So it's a consistent thing. And then the last thing I say, too, is I just thought about it because T. Michael is like, we're the only black people that work with copper. Larry, you and T. Michael should have a show together and call it Coppers.
Coppers, huh? I like that. A little play on words. Okay. All right.
I like that.
I do too. Right. Once a month, the coppers are in the house, right? And we won't even tarnish your image, right? After 6 months.
That's right.
Oh man. See, Jamal always comes up with something, But no, because I'm thinking, I'm like, because Mamleo is having their 55th anniversary. Jamal is going to be a recipient of the work he does in the community, and we have to, every time even our 50th, we had to go to Randolph, and here we're going to Venetia. So we don't, because there's no place like we considered Hibernia, but it didn't have the infrastructure for the numbers, right? And so we're struggling. Like, we want to support a black-owned business, but there's none. We were able to find a florist and stuff for flowers, but we struggle when we have these events, and we're going to be hosting our convention here this year for our regional, and we're trying to put together places where we can contribute to businesses of color. It's a struggle.
And Larry, again, I have to say it, Quincy and Warren, there's an opportunity for the black community to have the first trade school of their own with living workspace.
Yeah.
I'm willing to sit with every leader and say, hey, how can we make this happen? But the task, it's on our shoulders at TPA, which is not right, because this is to benefit the community.
Right. So, gentlemen, we've got about 3 minutes. I'm going to go around and give each of you a minute to make your pitch on whatever you think it is that's going to help move us forward. And I'll start with you, Terrence.
Well, what's going to help us is we have to really engage in what's going on in our community. We're really going to have to, get down and dirty. We can't keep blaming the city for all our failures when some of our failures are our own.
I think they said that's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing, expecting a different result. And I think we've been,
it's election time,
It's election time every year, but we keep on,
exactly.
We keep on exhibiting insanity.
So if you don't think they're the right candidate, then you don't have to vote for them.
Okay.
Vote for somebody else. Vote for yourself.
There you go. T. Michael? Yep.
And I want folks to go on peoplesacademyinc.org, reach out to your leaders, and ask them to do a sit down with us. What's wrong with us working with individuals, teaching them a trade in $1 billion industry? That's my take. Great show, and I will be listening.
Jamal,
thank you, my brothers, and have a good weekend.
Jamal, close us out. I know you've got something.
Yes, I do. The only thing that was going to save us as a community, individually and collectively, and this part is serious, and I'll end with something funny, is literally knowledge of self, consciousness, education, study, research. We got to know what we're talking about to get a grasp on the world, to then figure out a plan that is intelligent and makes sense. So that's the only thing that's going to save us. That and Stash's Pizza.
Stash's Pizza. I think that's Greek owned, right? But okay.
and you've been reading the headlines, yeah?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I appreciate Jamal. Enjoy your family down there, and I will try to pick up the slack for you, my brother. It's going to be a long day for me. After that, I've got to go and celebrate St. Patrick's with all my rest of my compadres for the full call out. You got out of town just in town.
Well, not for nothing tomorrow, because around this time last year, we had a bunch of corned beef.
Oh, that's right.
Or maybe you won't have corned beef this week. We'll probably get corned beef next week. Yep.
Next week, all the leftovers. All right.
Yep.
All right. Well, the Irish eye is smiling. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. It's going to be pretty decent. I know it's probably a little warmer where you are. Folks, you've been listening to Thank you, Terrence. Appreciate you, brother. Stay safe.
Appreciate you more, big bro. Appreciate y'all.
All right,
love y'all.
Take care. This is why we, this broadcast is so informative and impactful because of callers like that in the education. I just wish that more folks would take heed of the information that is being shared with them and not just take it in and just ignore it. You've been listening to At the Round Table with Mamla. Dr. Bradley was off today. He will be back with us next week to give you a checkup from the neck up. I want to thank you, Pastor Hobbs, sir, for your due diligence here and multitasking here. Folks, be safe and enjoy the rest of this weekend. Enjoy the March Madness. Already some big upsets there. So, again, you listen at the Round Table with Mamleo. Enjoy the rest of your day.
'Cause I still believe that anything